To understand the business of mythology and what a chief belief officer is supposed to do, you have to hear a story of Ganesha, the elephant-headed god who is the scribe of storytellers, and his brother, the athletic warlord of the gods, Kartikeya. The two brothers one day decided to go on a race 3 times around the world. Kartikeya leapt on his peacock and flew around the continents and the mountains and the oceans. He went around once, he went around twice, he went around thrice. But his brother, Ganesha, simply walked around his parents once, twice, thrice, and said, "I won." "How come?" said Kartikeya. And Ganesha said, "You went around the world. I went around my world. What matters more?" If you understand the difference between the world and my world, you understand the difference between logos and mythos. The world is objective, logical, universal, factual, scientific. My world is subjective. It's emotional. It's personal. It's perceptions, thoughts, feelings, dreams. It is the belief system that we carry. It's the myth that we live in. The world tells us how the world functions, how the sun rises, how we are born. My world tells us why the sun rises. Why were we born? Every culture is trying to understand itself. Why do we exist? And every culture comes up with its own understanding of life, its own customized version of mythology. Culture is a reaction to nature. And this understanding of our ancestors is transmitted generation from generation in the form of stories, symbols, and rituals, which are always indifferent to rationality. And so when you study it, you realize that different people of the world have a different understanding of the world. Different people see things differently, different viewpoints. There is my world and there is your world. And my world is always better than your world. Because my world, you see, is rational, and yours is superstition, yours is faith, yours is illogical. This is the root of the clash of civilizations. It took place once in 326 BC on the banks of a river called the Indus, now in Pakistan. This river lends itself to India's name, India, Indus. Alexander, a young Macedonian, met there what he called a gymnosophist, which means the naked wise man. We don't know who he was. Perhaps he was a Jain monk, like Bahubali over here, the Gomateshwara Bahubali, whose image is not far from Mysore. Or perhaps he was just a yogi who was sitting on a rock, staring at the sky and the sun and the moon. Alexander asked, "What are you doing?" And the gymnosophist answered, "I'm experiencing nothingness." Then the gymnosophist asked, "What are you doing?" And Alexander said, "I am conquering the world." And they both laughed. Each one thought the other was a fool. Gymnosophist said, "Why is he conquering the world? It's pointless." And Alexander thought, "Why is he sitting around doing nothing? What a waste of a life." To understand this difference in viewpoints, we have to understand the subjective truth of Alexander, his myth, and the mythology which constructed it. Alexander's mother, his parents, his teacher, Aristotle, told him the story of Homer's Iliad. They told him of a great hero called Achilles, who, when participated in battle, victory was assured. But when he withdrew from the battle, defeat was inevitable. Achilles was a man who could shape history, a man of destiny. And this is what you should be, Alexander. That's what he heard. What should you not be? You should not be Sisyphus, who rolls a rock up the mountain all day only to find the boulder roll down at night. Don't live a life which is monotonous, mediocre, meaningless. Be spectacular, like the Greek heroes, like Jason, who went across the sea with the Argonauts and fetched the golden fleece. Be spectacular, like Theseus, who entered the labyrinth and killed the bull-headed Minotaur. When you play in a race, win. Because when you win, the exhilaration of victory is the closest you will come to the ambrosia of the gods. Because you see, the Greeks believed you live only once. And when you die, you have to cross the river Styx. And if you have lived an extraordinary life, you will be welcomed to Elysium, or what the French call Champs-Élysées. The heaven of the heroes. But these are not the stories that the gymnosophist heard. He heard a very different story. He heard of a man called Bharat, after whom India is called Bharata. Bharat also conquered the world. And then he went to the topmost peak of the greatest mountain in the center of the world called Meru. And he wanted to hoist his flag to say, I was here first. But when he reached the mountain peak, he found the peak covered with countless flags of world conquerors before him, each one claiming, I was here first. That's what I thought until I came here. And suddenly, in this canvas of infinity, Bharat felt insignificant. This was the mythology of the gymnosophist. You see, he had heroes like Ram, Raghupati Ram, and Krishna, Govinda, Hari. But they were not two characters on two different adventures. They were two lifetimes of the same hero. When Ramayana ends, the Mahabharata begins. When Ram dies, Krishna is born. When Krishna dies, eventually he will be back as Ram. You see, the Indians also had a river which separates the land of the living from the land of the dead. But you don't cross it once. You go to and fro endlessly. It was called the Vaitarni. You go again and again and again. Because you see, nothing lasts forever in India, not even death.